The shrill sound of a cell phone dialing pierced through the ambient noise of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning. Terminal F buzzed with the usual chaos of summer travelers, but the woman standing in the TSA security line seemed oblivious to everything except her growing frustration. 911. What's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone speaker, barely audible above the din of rolling luggage and boarding announcements. I need to report a disturbance at the airport security checkpoint, the woman said, her voice sharp with indignation. There's a fat black girl here who's deliberately slowing down the line. She's been at the scanner for at least 5 minutes, and I think she's doing it on purpose to make people late for their flights. The silence that followed lasted 3 heartbeats. Then, the dispatcher's professional composure returned. Ma'am, what exactly is the nature of the disturbance? Is anyone in immediate danger? She's disrupting the peace. This is harassment. I have a connecting flight to catch. And she's deliberately making everyone wait. The woman's voice rose to a pitch that made heads turn in the security line. I want her removed immediately. 15 feet away, 16-year-old Nia Williams stood frozen in the body scanner, her dark eyes wide with mortification as she realized the commotion behind her was about her. The TSA agent in front of her, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair, had been patiently explaining the screening process after the machine had beeped unexpectedly. Honey, just step out slowly, and we'll do a quick pat-down, the agent said gently. Sometimes these machines are sensitive to fabric patterns or jewelry. It's nothing to worry about. But Nia wasn't listening anymore. The woman's voice behind her carried clearly through the security area, each word hitting like a physical blow. Fat black girl. The phrase echoed in her mind, drowning out everything else. She had been looking forward to this trip for months. Her first solo flight to visit her cousins in Orlando for summer vacation. Now she felt every eye in the terminal boring into her, judging her, finding her wanting. The woman making the call was Patricia Holbrook, though she had never bothered to learn Nia's name. At 42, Patricia possessed the kind of aggressive entitlement that came from years of getting her way through sheer force of will and volume. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her designer business suit screamed corporate authority. She had built her career in pharmaceutical sales by never backing down from a confrontation, and she wasn't about to start now. Are you listening to me? Patricia snapped into the phone. I'm telling you there's a problem here, and you need to send someone. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice. Can you tell me if there's any physical altercation taking place? There will be, if someone doesn't do something about this situation. Patricia's free hand gestured wildly, nearly knocking over the businessman behind her. This is exactly the kind of thing that's wrong with air travel today. People have no consideration for others. Nia's hands trembled as she stepped out of the scanner. The TSA agent reached for her gently, but Nia flinched away, her heart racing. She had never experienced anything like this before. Growing up in a small town in South Carolina, she had been sheltered from the worst kinds of prejudice, surrounded by family and friends who protected her from the harshest realities of the world. I'm sorry, Nia whispered, tears beginning to well in her eyes. I don't know what I did wrong. The TSA agent's expression softened with compassion. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Some people just don't understand that everyone deserves to travel safely and with dignity. But Patricia wasn't finished. She pocketed her phone and strode forward, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished floor. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed. I have a flight to catch in 30 minutes, and this situation is completely unacceptable. The TSA agent, whose name tag read Officer Martinez, straightened her shoulders. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. We're conducting a routine screening, and I need you to remain in line." Routine. Patricia's voice dripped with sarcasm. This girl has been holding up the line for 10 minutes. Look at her. She's obviously trying to cause problems. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Nia felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. Fellow travelers who had initially been sympathetic, now beginning to murmur with impatience. The connecting flight she was supposed to catch had been delayed due to weather, giving her what should have been plenty of time to make it through security. Now she wondered if she would make it at all. "I just want to see my cousins," Nia said quietly, her voice barely audible above the airport noise. "I haven't seen them in 2 years." Patricia scoffed. "Oh, please, save the sob story for someone who cares. Some of us have important business to conduct." The cruelty in her voice was unmistakable, and several passengers in line began to shift uncomfortably. A young mother with 2 small children looked appalled, while an elderly man shook his head in disgust. But no one spoke up. In the post-9/11 world of airport security, people had learned to keep their heads down and avoid making waves. Officer Martinez had seen enough. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your position in line immediately, or I'll have to call for assistance." "Call for assistance." Patricia laughed bitterly. "I'm the one who called for assistance. I'm the one being inconvenienced here." She turned to address the growing crowd of passengers. "Can you believe this? We're all being held hostage by someone who clearly doesn't belong here, and they're threatening me for speaking up." The words hit Nia like a physical blow. "Doesn't belong here." The phrase settled into her chest like a stone, heavy and cold. She had been excited about this trip, had saved her babysitting money for months to buy souvenirs for her cousins. Her grandmother had driven her to the airport at 5 in the morning, hugging her tight and telling her to be safe and have fun. Now she felt like she was suffocating. The bright fluorescent lights of the airport seemed too harsh, the noise too loud, the space too small. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never come back up. "I want to go home," she whispered to Officer Martinez. "I just want to go home." But Patricia wasn't done. She had tasted blood in the water and sensed victory. Look at her. She's crying now. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's trying to manipulate the situation. Officer Martinez stepped between Patricia and Nia, her patience finally exhausted. "Ma'am, you need to move back to your position in line right now, or I will have you removed from the checkpoint." "Removed me?" Patricia's voice reached a new octave of outrage. "I'm not the one causing problems here. I'm a tax-paying citizen who has every right to travel without being harassed." The irony of her statement was lost on no one, except Patricia herself. She pulled out her phone again, this time filming. "I'm documenting this entire incident. This is going to go viral. People need to see what's happening in our airports." Nia covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by the attention and the cameras. She had never been in trouble before, had never been the center of any kind of conflict. Her parents had raised her to be polite, to follow rules, to avoid confrontation. Now she was trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. The situation might have escalated further, but at that moment, a new voice cut through the chaos with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "What exactly is going on here?" The voice belonged to a tall, elegant woman in her early 50s, wearing a crisp TSA uniform with supervisory stripes. Her dark skin was smooth and unlined, her graying hair pulled back in a professional bun. She moved with the confidence of someone who had spent decades in positions of authority, and there was something about her presence that immediately commanded respect. Officer Martinez visibly relaxed. Supervisor Johnson, this passenger has been disrupting the screening process and making inappropriate comments about another traveler. Supervisor. Johnson's dark eyes took in the scene quickly. Professionally. She saw Naya's tears, Patricia's aggressive stance, the crowd of uncomfortable passengers. But there was something else in her expression as she looked at Nia. Something that made her features soften almost imperceptibly. "I see," she said calmly. "And what inappropriate comments were made?" Patricia stepped forward, sensing an opportunity to present her case to someone in authority. Finally, someone with some sense. "I've been trying to explain to your staff that this girl has been deliberately slowing down the line. She's been in that scanner for almost 15 minutes, and when I complained, they threatened to have me removed." Supervisor Johnson's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. 15 minutes? At least maybe 20. And when I called 911 to report the disturbance, they acted like I was the problem. "You called 911. Supervisor Johnson's voice remained level, but there was a new edge to it that made several passengers step back instinctively. "Of course I did. Someone had to do something." Patricia was warming to her theme now, confident that she had found an ally. This fat black girl was obviously trying to cause trouble, and your staff was just enabling her. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence that followed. Supervisor Johnson's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the air around her seemed to drop several degrees. She looked at Nia, who was still trying to hide behind her hands, and then back at Patricia. "I see," she said quietly. "And what exactly did you hope to accomplish by calling 911? Patricia mistook the question for support. "I wanted her removed. This is harassment. I have rights." "You certainly do," Supervisor Johnson agreed. "As does everyone else in this terminal." She turned to Officer Martinez. "How long was this young lady actually in the scanner?" "Less than 2 minutes, ma'am. Standard screening time. The machine detected some metal in her pocket, so we did a brief manual check. Nothing unusual." Supervisor Johnson nodded. "And during this time, did she cooperate with all screening procedures?" "Completely, ma'am. She was very polite and followed all instructions." Patricia's confidence began to waver as she sensed that the conversation wasn't going in the direction she had expected. "Well, it felt like 15 minutes when you're standing in line. Time moves differently." Supervisor Johnson turned her attention fully to Patricia now, and there was something in her gaze that made the older woman take an involuntary step backward. "Ms. Holbrook, Patricia Holbrook." "Ms. Holbrook, I need to ask you to step aside so we can discuss this matter privately." Patricia's jaw set stubbornly. "I'm not going anywhere until the situation is resolved to my satisfaction." It was then that Supervisor Johnson did something that shocked everyone in the security area. She walked over to Naya, who was still standing by the scanner, with tears streaming down her face, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Nia," she said softly, "baby, look at me." Nia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and confusion. "How do you know my name?" Supervisor Johnson smiled, and suddenly, her stern professional demeanor cracked to reveal something warmer underneath. "Because I've been looking forward to seeing you for months. I'm Aunt Denise." The revelation hit the security checkpoint like a bomb. Patricia's mouth fell open in shock. Officer Martinez's eyebrows shot up. and the passengers in line began to murmur among themselves. Nia stared at the woman in front of her, trying to process what she was hearing. "Aunt Denise." Nia's voice was barely a whisper. But you work at the airport in Orlando. You're supposed to meet me at the gate when I land." Supervisor Johnson's smile widened. "I got transferred to Atlanta last month. I wanted to surprise you, but I've been stuck in meetings all morning. I just got word that there was a disturbance at my checkpoint, and I came to see what was happening." She turned to look at Patricia, and the warmth in her expression evaporated instantly. "I had no idea it involved my niece." Patricia's face went white as the implications of the situation began to sink in. Your niece." "My niece," Supervisor Johnson confirmed. "The fat black girl you called 911 about. The one you said doesn't belong here." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. But she was surrounded by TSA agents and passengers who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from disgust to amazement. I didn't know," Patricia stammered. "You didn't know what?" Supervisor Johnson's voice was deadly quiet. "You didn't know that she was a human being deserving of basic respect. You didn't know that calling 911 to report a teenage girl for the crime of existing while black was inappropriate." Patricia's training in corporate damage control kicked in. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just frustrated about my flight." "Oh, there's been a misunderstanding, all right." Supervisor Johnson cut her off. "You misunderstood what kind of person you were dealing with." She turned to Officer Martinez. "Officer, I need you to call security. Ms. Holbrook is being removed from the checkpoint." "What?" Patricia's voice cracked. "You can't do that. I haven't done anything wrong." "You've disrupted the screening process, made false statements to emergency services, and engaged in harassment of a minor," Supervisor Johnson said calmly. "Those are all violations of federal aviation regulations." Patricia's corporate composure finally cracked completely. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to your supervisor." Supervisor Johnson's smile was cold as ice. "I am the supervisor. In fact, I'm the regional director of operations for the entire Southeast District, which means I supervise about 3,000 TSA agents across 6 states. The blood drained from Patricia's face. "Regional director!" "That's right. And, Ms. Holbrook, I want you to think very carefully about your next words, because they're going to determine whether you're simply banned from this airport or whether we press federal charges." Patricia looked around desperately for support, but found none. The passengers in line were watching the drama unfold with fascination, many of them recording on their phones. The young mother with the 2 children was shaking her head in disgust, while the elderly man was nodding approvingly at Supervisor Johnson's handling of the situation. I think I should go," Patricia said weakly. "You're going to go?" Supervisor Johnson agreed. "The question is, how? Are you going to apologize to my niece and leave quietly, or are you going to make this harder on yourself?" Patricia looked at Nia, who was watching the confrontation with wide eyes. The teenager's tears had stopped, but she still looked shaken and vulnerable. For a moment, Patricia seemed to struggle with herself, as if some part of her recognized the enormity of what she had done. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I was frustrated, and I said things I shouldn't have said." Supervisor Johnson's expression didn't soften. "That's not an apology. That's an excuse. Try again." Patricia's jaw worked silently for a moment. "I'm sorry. Nia, I was wrong to say those things about you. You have every right to be here. It wasn't much, but it was something. Nia nodded slightly, still too overwhelmed to speak. Supervisor Johnson placed a protective arm around her niece's shoulders. Officer Martinez, please escort Ms. Holbrook to the security office. She'll be completing some paperwork before she leaves. As Patricia was led away, the crowd of passengers began to disperse, many of them pulling out their phones to share what they had just witnessed. The young mother approached Supervisor Johnson and Nia. I just wanted to say how sorry I am that happened to you, she said to Nia, and how proud I am of how you handled it. You showed more grace than I would have. Nia managed a small smile. Thank you. The elderly man also stepped forward. Young lady, you've got a good aunt there, and you've got a good heart. Don't let people like that woman make you think otherwise. As the checkpoint returned to normal operations, Supervisor Johnson led Nia to a quiet corner, away from the crowds. Are you okay, baby? She asked gently. Nia nodded, then shook her head, then started crying again. I don't understand why she said those things. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Supervisor Johnson pulled her into a hug. You weren't doing anything wrong. Some people in this world are just full of hate, and they look for excuses to let it out. It's not about you. It's about them. But she called 911, Nia said, her voice muffled against her aunt's shoulder. She said I didn't belong here. She was wrong, Supervisor Johnson said firmly. You belong anywhere you want to be. You're smart, you're kind, you're beautiful, and you have just as much right to travel as anyone else in this airport. They stood together for a moment, aunt and niece, while the airport continued its busy rhythm around them. Finally, Supervisor Johnson pulled back and looked at Nia seriously. I need you to know something. This kind of thing happens more often than it should. There are people out there who will try to make you feel small, who will try to convince you that you don't deserve the same respect as everyone else. But you can't let them win. Nia nodded, wiping her eyes. What's going to happen to her? She's going to be banned from this airport, Supervisor Johnson said. And I'm going to file a report with the FBI about her misuse of emergency services. They take that kind of thing seriously. Good, Nia said quietly. I don't want her to do this to someone else. Supervisor Johnson smiled proudly. That's my girl, always thinking about others. But the story was far from over. As Patricia sat in the security office, filling out paperwork that would result in her permanent ban from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, she made a decision that would prove to be her biggest mistake yet. She pulled out her phone and began typing a social media post. Absolutely disgusting treatment at ATL Airport today. Was harassed by TSA agents for complaining about slow security screening. Apparently, questioning inefficient procedures is now considered racist. Political correctness gone mad. Will never fly through Atlanta again. Customer service fail. TSA abuse. Atlanta Airport. She hit post and sat back, confident that her version of events would generate sympathy and outrage from her social media followers. She had over 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, mostly pharmaceutical industry professionals, who shared her conservative political views. She expected support, validation, maybe even some viral attention that would pressure the airport to reverse their decision. What she didn't expect was that one of the passengers in the security line had recorded the entire confrontation and posted it to Twitter with the caption, Karen calls 911 on black teenager at Atlanta Airport. Doesn't realize girl's aunt is head of TSA. Justice served. The video went viral within hours. By evening, it had been shared thousands of times, with viewers adding their own commentary about Patricia's behavior and praising Supervisor Johnson's professional handling of the situation. The hashtag #AirportKaren began trending nationwide. Meanwhile, Nia had made it to Orlando and was enjoying dinner with her cousins when her phone started buzzing with notifications. Her aunt had called to warn her that the incident was gaining national attention. "People are saying nice things about you," Supervisor Johnson said over the phone, "about how mature and graceful you were. But there might be some media attention. Are you okay with that?" Nia considered the question seriously. If it helps other people understand what it's like to be treated that way, then yes, I'm okay with it. The next morning, Patricia woke up to find her phone buzzing with notifications. Her social media post had indeed gone viral, but not in the way she had hoped. The video of the incident had been shared alongside her post, and people were connecting the dots. The comments were brutal. "So you're the Karen who called 911 on a teenager? Disgusting. This is what actual racism looks like. Hope you learned your lesson. Imagine calling 911 because a black girl existed in your vicinity. Get help." Her employer, a major pharmaceutical company, had been tagged in dozens of posts. People were demanding that she be fired, threatening boycotts, sharing her LinkedIn profile with comments about her behavior. Her phone was ringing constantly with calls from reporters. Her doorbell was ringing with news crews, and her email was flooded with messages from strangers. By noon, she had been called into a meeting with Human Resources. By 2 o'clock, she was cleaning out her desk. By 5 o'clock, she was trending on multiple social media platforms as the latest example of entitled behavior gone wrong. The story was picked up by major news outlets across the country. CNN ran a segment on airline discrimination and the misuse of emergency services. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution published an editorial about the need for better cultural sensitivity training. The Today Show interviewed Supervisor Johnson about her approach to de-escalating conflicts in high-stress environments. But the most powerful moment came when Good Morning America brought Nia and her aunt together for a live interview. Nia, poised and articulate despite her young age, spoke about the experience with a maturity that impressed viewers across the country. "I was scared," she said simply. "I didn't understand why she was so angry at me. I just wanted to visit my family." The interviewer asked her how she felt about the woman's apology. "I think she was sorry she got in trouble," Nia said thoughtfully. "But I hope she thinks about why she acted that way. I hope she learns that we're all just people trying to get where we need to go." Supervisor Johnson spoke about the incident from a professional perspective, explaining how TSA agents are trained to handle disruptions and discrimination. But her pride in her niece was evident in every word. "Nia handled herself with more grace than many adults would have," she said. "She's always been mature for her age. But seeing how she responded to such ugliness, with such dignity, made me incredibly proud." The interview sparked a broader conversation about airline travel, racial profiling, and the responsibilities of bystanders. Many viewers shared their own stories of discrimination in airports and other public spaces. Support groups for young people who had experienced similar treatment began forming online. Meanwhile, Patricia found herself effectively unemployable in her industry. The video and news coverage had made her a symbol of workplace liability. No pharmaceutical company wanted to hire someone who had become nationally known for racist behavior. Her attempts to rebrand herself as a victim of cancel culture only deepened her reputation problems. But the real impact was on the systems that had allowed the incident to happen in the first place. The TSA announced a comprehensive review of their customer service protocols. with a focus on preventing discrimination and protecting vulnerable passengers. New training programs were developed to help agents recognize and respond to harassment situations. Airport security checkpoints across the country began implementing dignity protocols designed to ensure that all passengers, regardless of race, size, or other characteristics, were treated with respect during the screening process. The Nia Williams Initiative, as it came to be known, became a model for addressing discrimination in transportation settings. 6 months later, Nia was invited to speak at a conference on civil rights and transportation justice. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of activists, transportation officials, and fellow teenagers, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that morning at the airport. "I never wanted to be famous for this," she said. "I just wanted to see my cousins. But if my experience can help other young people understand that they have the right to be treated with respect, then I'm glad it happened." She paused, looking out at the audience. "People ask me if I'm angry about what happened. I'm not angry. I'm determined. I'm determined to live my life with dignity, to travel where I want to go, and to speak up when I see injustice." The audience erupted in applause. In the back of the room, Supervisor Johnson wiped away tears of pride. Her niece had turned a moment of cruelty into a catalyst for change. As for Patricia, she had eventually found work as a sales assistant at a small medical supply company, making a fraction of her previous salary. She kept a low profile, had deactivated most of her social media accounts, and tried to rebuild her life away from the public eye. She had never publicly acknowledged the full extent of her wrongdoing, but those who knew her said she seemed genuinely changed by the experience. The incident had lasting effects on airport culture as well. The hashtag #HOA Karen became a warning to other passengers about the consequences of discriminatory behavior. Security checkpoint incidents involving racial profiling dropped significantly in the months following the video's viral spread. But perhaps the most important change was in the countless young people who saw Nia's story and understood that they too had the right to travel with dignity. Letters poured in from teenagers across the country, thanking her for her courage and sharing their own experiences with discrimination. One letter, from a 17-year-old Latina girl in Phoenix, particularly moved Nia. "I was nervous about flying alone to college, but after seeing how you handled that situation, I feel braver. Thank you for showing me that I belong in those spaces too." The ripple effects continued long after the initial incident. The TSA's revised training programs became a model for other federal agencies. The Good Morning America interview was used in diversity training sessions across multiple industries. Nia's simple statement that "we're all just people trying to get where we need to go" became a rallying cry for transportation justice advocates. A year later, Nia was preparing for her senior year of high school when she received an unexpected phone call. The caller introduced herself as the admissions officer from a prestigious university, explaining that they had seen her interview and wanted to offer her a full scholarship to study civil rights law. "Your poise and maturity in handling that situation showed us the kind of leader our program is designed to develop," the officer explained. "We believe you have the potential to make a real difference in the world." Nia accepted the scholarship, and 4 years later, she graduated summa cum laude with a degree in civil rights law. Her thesis, titled "Dignity in Transit Protecting Vulnerable Passengers in Transportation Settings," became required reading in several law schools. During her graduation ceremony, Supervisor Johnson sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she watched her niece receive her degree. The scared 16-year-old who had been humiliated at an airport security checkpoint had grown into a confident young woman dedicated to fighting injustice. In her valedictorian speech, Nia reflected on the journey that had brought her to that moment. 4 years ago, a woman tried to make me feel like I didn't belong in an airport. Today, I'm here to tell you that we all belong wherever we choose to go. We all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who we are or what we look like. The audience rose to its feet in applause. In the back of the auditorium, several airport security officers who had followed Nia's story over the years wiped away tears. The incident that had started as a moment of ugly discrimination had become a story of resilience, growth, and hope. As Nia walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she thought about all the young people who had reached out to her over the years, sharing their own stories of discrimination and thanking her for her courage. She thought about the policy changes that had been implemented, the training programs that had been developed, the conversations that had been started. Most of all, she thought about the lesson she had learned that day at the airport, that sometimes the most powerful response to hatred is simply to refuse to let it diminish your sense of your own worth. She had chosen to turn her pain into purpose, her humiliation into advocacy, her fear into determination. The woman who had called 911 on a fat black girl had unknowingly created a civil rights leader. The teenager who had been told she didn't belong had grown into a woman who would spend her career ensuring that everyone knew they belonged. As she left the graduation ceremony, diploma in hand, Nia smiled at the thought of all the airports she would travel through in her career, all the courtrooms she would argue in, all the young people she would inspire. Patricia Holbrook had tried to make her feel small, but instead had helped her discover just how big she could be. The story that began with a cruel phone call had become a testament to the power of dignity, the importance of family, and the possibility of transformation. In the end, it wasn't about what one person had tried to take away from a teenage girl. It was about what that girl had chosen to do with the experience, and how she had used it to make the world a little more just for everyone who came after her. Years later, when Nia was arguing her first case before the Supreme Court, she would think back to that moment at the airport security checkpoint. She would remember her aunt's protective embrace, the supportive words from strangers, and her own decision to respond to cruelty with grace. In that moment, she would understand that sometimes the most important journeys begin not with a destination in mind, but with the simple determination to keep moving forward, no matter who tries to block your path. The gavel would fall, the case would be won, and justice would be served. But the real victory had been won years earlier, in an airport security line, by a 16-year-old girl who refused to let anyone make her feel like she didn't belong.